Normally in Minecraft, it's not possible to have a village spawn in a mesa, also known as a Badlands biome. However, it's still possible to get a village by curing zombie villagers. So in this video, I'm going to explain how to do it while doing it myself. So the first thing, when you spawn in, is go around punching some dead bushes to get free sticks, and look for abandoned mine shafts. The good thing about mesas is that abandoned mine shafts generate near the surface, and they're very common. So this is the way that you will first get wood. Another good thing about abandoned mine shafts is that string is everywhere by breaking some cobweb, so string will be useful for making beds and fishing poles and bows. Additionally, there are chests everywhere on the surface, so you can get really good stuff. One of the most important things we need to cure zombie villagers is golden apples, so like that, I just got one golden apple, and I'll only need one more to cure 2 zombie villagers. In addition, you will need splash potions of weakness. Another good thing in mine shafts is spider spawners have a ton of string, so you can get enough to make a bed just from finding one spawner. Another thing you need for the splash potions is sugar, which you can find from sugarcane next to water. The only other way to get sugarcane would be to kill a witch, and that's less reliable. So you'll find a lot of chests, not all of them are good. Dirt is pretty rare in mesas, but you can get it from the starter room in a mine shaft, and that will be useful if you ever get a potato or a carrot. You can start doing some farming to get food. In this chest here, I found an enchanted golden apple, which was really exciting. Those are very rare, but it turns out they cannot be used in place of a normal gapple to cure a zombie villager. So next up, I did some mining, started getting some iron and resources so that I would eventually be able to go to the nether, because we are going to need to go to the nether in order to make potions. So glowberries, which you can get from the mine shaft chest, can make a very nice, easy food source early on, because food is hard in mesas because they have no passive mobs, no cows or chickens or anything. Another great thing about mesas is that gold generates very close to the surface, very shallow, and very frequently, so it's easy to get rich. Next up, I tricked a skeleton and a zombie into fighting, so I got to spectate that for a little while, but unfortunately, a spider snuck up on me, and I had to stop watching the fight, and in the end, the zombie lost, and everyone was mad at me. So here's the result of mining. Here's all the gold I got to start, so I was pretty much ready to go to the nether, trade with piglins, find a fortress. So these new pillars they added in 1.17 that support the mine shafts, that's the best way to get wood here, because it's the only way to get actual logs. So here's another chest that didn't have much in it, no golden apple unfortunately. So pause, you see what I see? There is cobblestone in that entrance to the mine shaft if you look really closely. So I knew that meant there must be some sort of a spawner. I was hoping it would be a zombie spawner, so I could more easily find zombie villagers to convert back into villagers, and lucky me, it was a zombie spawner. So I lit it up, and then got to see what was in the chest. Unfortunately, nothing super exciting. Mostly junk. The name tag could be useful to potentially name a zombie villager if I didn't have the resources to cure him when I found him. And then here's another chest that again, nothing super exciting. Still hoping for another gapple. So it's easy to find lava pools because you just look for any exposed stone near the surface. So I found my first lava pool here, and I immediately got ready to start building a portal. The one thing I needed was flint. Gravel doesn't really exist on the surface, so I had to dig way down until I found a flint. Next, I lit the portal and went through. It put me into one of those weird Enderman biomes, which is fine, so I started making my way across and hopefully finding a fortress. So I started trading with piglins, and they immediately gave me ender pearls on the second trade, and then again on the fourth trade. It was ridiculously lucky, and you can see these guys both have golden chest plates, which is how you know they're good piglins. Anyways, why do I want ender pearls? Well, I want to find a stronghold, because strongholds have apples, and I still need a second gapple. Also, here are some brown mushrooms, because we need those in order to brew the potion. Next, I found a fortress and started gathering netherwort. It turns out you don't actually need netherwort for the specific potion of weakness, but I didn't realize that. Next, I found the blaze spawner, used a potion of fire resistance from the piglins, and tried to get a few blaze rods. So you need at least 2 blaze rods in order to do the brewing, and then I wanted at least 1 more blaze rod to make sure I had enough eyes of ender to find the stronghold. But I figured, better safe than sorry, while I'm here, I'll get some more. So once I got 8 rods, I decided to move on. So, back in the overworld, it was time to start brewing. So I made a brewing stand, and my plan was to make a potion of strength, then use a fermented spider eye to turn it into a potion of weakness. So I started off by brewing the awkward potion with some netherwort, and once that was finished, I made my fermented spider eye, and prepared to put in some blaze powder first, so it would be a potion of strength. So I put in the blaze powder, and waited for that to finish. When that was done, I put in the fermented spider eye and was surprised that nothing happened. So I looked it up, and it turns out what you actually need to do is just directly put the fermented spider eye into water. So I filled up some more bottles with water, and yeah, it turns out you didn't even need another wort at all the entire time. So put the plain bottles of water in, then put the fermented spider eye on top, and that will make you a potion of weakness. So now I had 3 potions of weakness, and I would just need to ultimately add gunpowder to them to make them splash potions. Next, I made an eye vendor and decided to look for the stronghold because I still needed 1 more apple to make a golden apple. So I threw the eye vendor and started going. I quickly ran into a ruin portal, no golden apple, found a couple more chests, found a diamond, but other than that, nothing super useful. And then I started fishing. This is actually one of the most reliable ways to get food in a mesa because you get string from the mine shafts. Finally, when I was almost to the stronghold, I found a random minecart chest that had a golden apple. So now I'm ready to head back, finish the brewing by making them into splash potions, and now I was totally ready for the zombie villagers. So I went back to the zombie spawner and started spawning zombies in hopes that one of them would be a villager. If not, I just took them out. So I just waited for a few of them to come, checked if there was a villager. If not, I would slash with my sword and get some free rotten flesh. But after a while, I was getting a little bit nervous. Why are there no zombie villagers? Is it not possible for spawners to make zombie villagers? So I tried for a pretty long time before giving up and eventually deciding it would be best to go out at night and look for naturally spawned zombies. And sure enough, after just one night, I found a zombie villager. I trapped him in a boat and quickly started trying to make a little wall around him to help keep him safe. Because once it turns daylight, if he's still a zombie villager, he'll burn up. And once he turns into a villager, we don't want any other zombies to go for him. So I lit it up and placed some walls around until finally I felt it was safe enough to do the curing. So I took out the splash potion, threw the splash potion of weakness, and then got out a golden apple and fed him 1 golden apple. And then the curing process had begun. I just needed to keep him safe for a few more minutes, and then the transition would be complete, and I'd have my first villager. So the next day, I came back and checked, and sure enough, there was a villager wearing the normal desert villager things. I also got a potato from one of those zombies, so I started farming potatoes. Potatoes will be useful to help convince the villagers to breed once I have more than one of them. So I wanted to use bone meal to get as many potatoes as I could. The next night, I started looking for more zombie villagers. The most interesting thing I found was a chicken jockey, so I tried to free the chicken of its rider, since this is the only way you can get any sort of passive mobs in this game. Unfortunately, the chicken ran away and disappeared. So then I started working on a village for the villagers to live in. I wanted to make them live on kind of a bridge over this lake here. The next night I was back at it, but the coolest thing I found was a little skeleton duel. And it was a pretty even match. They were shooting back and forth, lots of arrows flying. In the end, one of the skeletons reigned victorious, and I took the other one out. The next day was more construction of little houses for the villagers to live in. I figured it would be a nice, safe place up in the air where zombies wouldn't be able to get them or anything, and with a lot of glass, no hostiles could spawn. The next night, some phantoms came after me, and I didn't really like that, so I decided it would probably be best to sleep through this next night instead of looking for a zombie villager. I'm not a fan of phantoms. I kind of wish they had never been added to the game. So on a typical night, I would go around and it would look like this. There would be hostile mobs everywhere, but just no zombie villagers. Plain zombies, skeletons, creepers, spiders, but it was a little bit disappointing. Finally, after several nights of searching, I saw a zombie villager up on the hill. So I got my boat out, ran over, and prepared to do the same thing as before. Once this one was in the boat, I was pretty confident that I would be able to succeed. So he ran in, I trapped him, then I gave him the potion, the golden apple, sealed him in, and then just waited a few minutes. And the next day, I was ready to bring both of my villagers in their boats over into their new house. So you just drive them over. It's a little bit slow going across the sand, but this is the safest way to transport villagers to guarantee they don't get away. And don't let them out of the boat until they're completely sealed in to where you're trying to get them to. So I brought them through this gateway, and I planned to put iron doors on the gateway so they would never be able to get out on their own. So, with everything in place, I was ready to release the villagers and let them explore their new home. So once I broke these boats, they would be free to move around, but the walls would hopefully keep them in. I didn't want anything happening to them, and I figured this would be a pretty safe sort of mini village. So they were a little hesitant at first. They didn't really know what to do with their freedom, but I hoped I would make it into a nice home where they could ultimately trade and be really useful. The first villager I decided to turn into a priest because, well, obviously I had a lot of rotten flesh to trade with them from the zombie spawner. More importantly, when they get upgraded to level 2, they do gold trades, which can be really powerful in a mesa. So I did my first trade with 30, so they gave me a discount actually, is only 26 rotten flesh because they were cured. Next, I realized I would need more beds if I wanted the village to ever expand and have more villagers, so I went for more string from a spider spawner. Then I turned the other villager into a farmer who was willing to do bread trades, which would be the easiest way of getting food from now on. Next, my potato farm was really starting to take off, so I threw 12 potatoes at each villager, which should be enough to make them willing to breed, because I wanted more villagers. Next, I found an axolotl in a ravine and let it go in the lake, just for fun. And sure enough, a few minutes later, I noticed there was a baby villager jumping on one of the beds. So, hooray, we can now get a full village. So I finally upgraded the priest and immediately traded gold with him. He was doing 1 gold for 1 emerald, so I just got 12 emeralds instantly. This is super powerful. I highly recommend doing a priest as your first villager when you cure a zombie. Next up, I did a bunch more trading. I did some gold trading. I started leveling up the armor any way I could, even if it perhaps wasn't the most efficient, because I wanted him to ultimately offer me diamond armor. I did a little bit more food trading with the farmer, and after that, it was back to the armorer. So, pretty soon I was able to get diamond boots, and off to a good start. Next, I threw more potatoes out and got more proof that, yes, a village is viable here because the villagers will breed and create new baby villagers. And then I was able to get full diamond armor after a lot of trading. This is a very good sign. I traded so much, I got full diamond armor. I was feeling pretty good. I realized you can make gapples from the farmer. I put another axolotl in the lake, and then I made a Fletcher, and I set off to see, can you effectively collect enough sticks from dead bushes? So I just spent a few minutes punching every dead bush I saw. I went as fast as I could, and did it for about 5 minutes or so. At the end of 5 minutes, I found that I had about 5 stacks, which when traded, turns out to be 10 emeralds. And that's fine. So there's one way to prove that a village is really a village, and that's if a raid can spawn there. So I saw some pillagers, and I paused for a minute and decided, wait, do I really want to do this to my village? Yes, my villagers will be safe, I can protect them, but this is for pride. This will prove that my village is a real village because a raid will spawn there. So I went right for the raid captain, and I got the bad omen effect. Then when I was running past to get some supplies, I accidentally went too close and triggered the raid. So I panicked and threw up some extra walls, and I think these extra walls were actually really helpful. I was hoping that no pillagers would be able to shoot over the walls as long as the villagers stayed up behind the glass. So the pillagers came from pretty far away. The first raid was not at all hard. I just used my shield and my axe to slowly take them out one by one, and I tried to take as little damage as possible. I would say this was a pretty standard sort of raid fight, and this wave was taken down after just a couple minutes. So the next wave came, and this time there were some Vindicators, so I started using my bow and arrow a little bit more. The Vindicators are pretty fast. Anyways, I was able to deal with that wave, and thankfully I had a bunch of spare shields from extra trading with the armorer, so I put a new shield on and was ready to go. But wave 3 included a Ravager, so I decided this is the time to use the arrows, don't spare anything, shoot as many arrows as possible straight at the Ravager. So most of this fight was taking a couple shots, then retreating, as the Ravager kept getting closer and closer. And I knew as long as I didn't get hit, I would be okay. I just hoped I would have enough arrows. Then up here, I thought I had the high ground. I thought I had a good trick. I jumped across this gap and figured I could just shoot the Ravager. There was no way he could get me. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Ravager charged across, and I was pretty scared, so I ran down, kept retreating further, considered taking the enchanted golden apple at that point, but then I realized you can use a shield, and as soon as I used the shield, the Ravager instantly died. So, I then realized I could craft some golden apples from the apples I had traded. This was a really good idea. Then I wanted to sleep because it was getting dark. I didn't want other hostile mobs, but there were still a couple raiders underneath the village, so I couldn't sleep. I had to go take them out. And as I took them out, by the time I got out of the water, the next wave spawned. So I started dealing with the next wave like normal, and eventually I got through this wave also. It wasn't super interesting. At the end there was a witch. I didn't want to get poisoned, so I tried taking the witch out with a bow. It took way too many shots, but eventually I finished this wave, and you can see, as I was taking out the last pillager, I saw there was a zombie siege starting. A zombie siege is a rare event in Java Edition where a bunch of zombies spawn at midnight and surround the village. So I was having a new wave coming in of the raid right as a zombie siege was starting. This was going to be one crazy night. So I decided to drink the strength potion first of all, if I was ever going to need it. This was the time. And I was hoping to take out a couple zombies before the raid really came, but then an annoying baby zombie came and started blocking me, so I had to go over and deal with the raid, and for some reason I decided to walk around the crops very carefully, didn't want to destroy the potatoes. I got really lucky and the Ravager went straight into the water. If the Ravager had stayed on land, this would have been a lot harder for me. But using the strength potion, using my bow, I was able to start taking a few mobs out. But I was still taking a lot of damage just because there were so many of them. So I started running back toward the water. I took a golden apple to be safe, and then I noticed there were a couple of Vexes flying around. This really scared me. I hadn't considered Vexes before. Would they be able to kill my villagers because they can just fly through and over the walls? Well, I decided to start shooting in that direction and get the Vexes out of there. Now you may be wondering, where did the Vexes come from? Well, there was an evoker, but also an iron golem spawned underneath the village and took the evoker out before I even got there. You can see there's a totem in the water. So I distracted the Vexes, started shooting at them, started taking some shots at the Ravager. Eventually I took out both the Vexes, which was very good. And then it was just kind of sitting in the water, taking some bow shots, and trying not to let my health get too low. And after a while they were doing quite a bit of damage to me, a lot of shots from the pillagers, so I started shielding, taking a golden apple, and being very careful. But ultimately with a Ravager in water, it was never too much of a threat. As long as I had enough arrows, I would take him out. At this point, the rider on the Ravager actually started suffocating because the Ravager was taking him through the clay blocks up there. That was pretty funny. But as this wave winded down, I was able to pick up the new totem, and this, as it turns out, was the very last pillager, and at this point, I had survived the raid. My villagers started launching off fireworks to celebrate, and all of them survived. I guess it was a nice village that I made, and it was just safe enough. So with the Hero of the Village status effect, I got some really good deals, including 1 glass bottle for 1 emerald, which is basically 1 sand per emerald. Then I made a new villager into a toolsmith, and I made a bell, because every village needs to have a bell. So this concludes my series of how to make a Mesa village.